Our first podcast in the Riffin Radio series features one of the giants of Jamaica's music, Toots Hibbert. Today we talk to two of his great musicians, drummer Paul Douglas and guitarist Andy Bassford. Andy, what kind of challenge was it to be both a lead guitarist and a rhythm guitarist for Toots?
One of the hardest things I've ever done. I was coming into the gig from playing with Dennis Brown, and in that situation, Dennis liked fills between the vocals in certain contexts. For example, Love Has Found Its Way, those kind of tunes. The more two-chord reggae tunes was slamming things out with the bass line, that kind of stuff. And from the kind of singer that Toots was, I thought he might be like a B.B. King kind of a guy where he would like fills between the vocals. So I went into it thinking that's what I was going to do. The first show, he said, "I don't want that." And I don't remember whether he said it in the middle of the show or immediately after, but he said, "I don't want that. I want you to stay with the part and stay out of my way." And the way he put it was, "When I am slurring, you must not slur," which to a trained musician once means one thing, but what he meant was that he wanted the background to be relatively static so that he could sing anywhere and any way he wanted. If he was nervous about whether I was going to drop a phrase in, that would impede him. And I pride myself on not getting in the way of a singer in that situation, because you watch their mouth. If the mouth opens, you don't play anything. But I didn't think it made sense to try to explain that, and it was clear what he wanted. So what he wanted was for the guitar to do something, in some cases exactly what was on the record, like 54-46, it's pretty straightforward. The other things, he wanted the guitar to stay kind of in the register where Hux Brown played it, sort of the lower mid-range around middle C. And Hux really set the template for a lot of what Toots wanted from the lead guitars. And since I'm a huge Hux Brown fan, that was a lot of fun for me. And it was really a challenge to try to do what Hux would do without copying him exactly. And Toots didn't necessarily want it to be exactly what Hux played, but he wanted that register. He didn't want the guitar leaping up into the high register like B.B. King, except when you soloed. And when you soloed, he really didn't care what you did. He liked blues, he liked rock, he liked flashy guitar solos, which is fine because I like them too. And the way he put it was, again, when I am slurring, you must not slur. When it is your time to solo, you can slur.
What about the rhythm? Was that less challenging as for being a rhythm?
No, that was worse. I thought I was a rhythm guitar player before I joined Toots and the Maytals. I was, but the thing that Toots wanted from the rhythm was unvarying intensity for however long he chose to sing that song. And he wanted the intensity to be constant at all dynamic levels. And again, coming from Dennis Brown, a Dennis Brown song was pretty predictable dynamically. He might break it down or he might do a fade or something, but basically it was pretty straightforward. He didn't sing things the same way every night, but he pretty much followed the script. Toots, on the other hand, was liable to do anything. You could be playing Pressure Drop, and you'd go through the 4 minutes like on the record, and then Toots would jump out in the audience and start dancing, or he would just start riffing vocally, and he would go on for however long he felt he needed to go on. And then sometimes he would bring the band down, he would cut the band down. It was a lot like playing with James Brown, one of those kind of people. And again, I like that stuff. And I grew up playing in orchestras and following a conductor. So once I figured out that Toots was essentially the conductor, I kind of had a handle on the gig. But the real problem was stamina. It's one thing to play a song for 4 minutes in the studio and keep the time steady and keep the feeling steady. It's a completely other thing to do it for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And Toots was a bear about the rhythm guitar. He was a guitar player himself, and he was always concerned about the stage volume. He didn't like us to play too loud, and sometimes he'd get really miserable about it. In one particular show, we were sound checking, and he wanted everything down really, really, really low, to the point where it was almost whispering. And then he wanted them to turn the rhythm guitar up in the monitors. And I said, Toots, rather than do that, why don't I turn it up at the amp here or play a little louder? Let's check it that way. It's going to be less trouble on stage when you start running around with the mic. So we did that, and we tweaked the level, and he was happy with it. And we got off stage, and I said, you're so concerned about the volume. Why did you want to turn the rhythm guitar up again? And he goes, my food that. Me eat off of that. He said, that's what I sing from. I sing from the rhythm guitar.
Tell me two of your unforgettable memories of working with him.
Oh, there was probably two a day. But I think that, I thought about this for a while, and one of them would have to be, it's something that I write about on my website, where we were playing the House of Blues in Cambridge, and it was kind of a run-of-the-mill short Toots tour, go from DC up through Maine, come back down, make some money, pay some bills. There was no record out. There was nothing special about the tour, except that was the tour where his audience started getting bigger. And the first night was at Lupo's in Providence, and normally we would have Lupo's, say, half to 2/3 full, enough to make them money, enough to get us to come back. That particular night, it was almost sold out, and it was all college kids, which I didn't understand. And I went out and talked to them and said, how did you find out about the show? And they go, everybody knows about Toots. So I didn't understand that at the moment. And then the next night was House of Blues. And it was a weird show because they had Eric Burden and the Animals at 6, I think, or 5, like a matinee show. And then they had, I think, Motorhead at 10, and they had us in the middle. So we went out there and we walked on stage, and the announcer said, I'm going to get emotional about this because I always get emotional when I tell the story. The announcer said, ladies and gentlemen, Toots and the Maytals. And they started clapping. It was sold out house. And they started clapping, and Paul is looking around at the band to count off Pressure Drop, which is the first tune. And the applause kept building. And Paul is looking at us and, looking at Jackie and Charles and Carl and myself. And we're looking, I think Doogie was on that one. We're looking around, and Paul had this expression like, what is this? said, I don't know. They kept clapping and clapping and clapping. Then they started standing up, and the applause kept building. Sorry. And the crowd, the entire room stood up, and we got a standing ovation before we played a note. In all my years of playing, I've never seen anything like it. And then Paul said, you know, what do we do? I said, you better start the tune or they're just not going to stop clapping. So he started the tune and Toots came out. And of course, it was an amazing show. So that was one memory. And then I guess another memory was we used to play the Belly Up in Solana Beach, which is the part of California right on the border of Mexico, you know, San Diego, that area. And that was a real stronghold for us, like Boston always was. And after sound check, I went out to the audience, and there was this bunch of people at a table near the stage. And they said, are you going to play 3 hours like you played last time? And I said, I really don't know. You know, we have no idea how long the show is going to be before we go on stage. It's really up to Toots. It's up to the crowd. It's up to how he feels. To some extent, it's up to the venue. I really don't know. They said, well, we came last time because somebody told us it was good. And it was the greatest thing we've ever seen. You guys played for 3 hours. We were so happy when we left, and we said when we had to come back if you're ever playing again. So here we are. And could you ask Toots to play for 3 hours? And I said, I could ask him, but he's not going to remember when he goes on stage. I'm sure it'll be a great show. I'm really glad you came back. So I went back to the dressing room, and of course I didn't say anything to Toots because he used to lose complete track of time when he was on stage. So we went out there and we played and we played and we played. And it was a great show. It was really one of the best shows we ever played there. And at the end of the show, I came off stage to say, you know, good night to the people who I'd met before the show. And they were pointing at the clock. And the Belly Up had this clock on the side of the stage so you could see how many minutes you had left. It was like those big school clocks that I had as a kid. It always used to make me laugh because we had exactly the same school clock in elementary school. And I'd look at it and go, is it over yet? You know, can I leave? So they pointed up at the clock, and they were shaking their heads, and they went, 3 hours and 15 minutes. You played even longer this time.
On your new album, Andy, The Harder They Strum, which is a guitar version of the soundtrack of The Harder They Come, you recorded Toots' Sweet and Dandy. Is there a significance of you recording that tune?
Yes, absolutely. The Harder They Come was the movie that got me interested in reggae as a freshman at college. It came out in 1972, which is the year I went to college. And it showed up in Hartford in 1973 at our film society. And I went to see everything because I grew up in a small town that didn't have a movie theater. And particularly anything with music, I was there. So, I'm sitting down there watching the movie and it's unfolding and there's all this great stuff. And I'm having trouble with the patois. I don't know if you remember, but in America, when they first released The Harder They Come, it had subtitles, which we really needed. And it got to the movie got to the scene at Dynamic when Toots and the Beverly's All-Stars are recording Sweet and Dandy in the studio. And I just fell in love with Toots and the Maytals and the sound that those guys were making. And the beauty of the voices and how soulful and, emotional it was. And I've had this feeling 3 or 4 times in my life. The first time was hearing Percy Sledge when I was a little kid. And then B.B. King, which is why I wanted to play the guitar, and then John Coltrane later in college. Those 4 moments for me as a musician were pivotal because I encountered a kind of music I hadn't run into before. And my reaction was the same. Why has this been kept from me? I want to find out more about it. I need to find more about it. There is something of me in here. These people are saying how I feel. And that was my reaction seeing Toots singing Sweet and Dandy and Miracle of Miracles, however many years it was later. 10, 15 years later, I was playing with him, and then I ended up playing with just about all those guys that are in the movie, either in Jamaica in the studios or afterwards in his band or both. So it's an incredibly important song to me personally. And it was also very important to Toots. We did it every night, I think, the 20 something years I was there. We played it every night. And Toots, the song is about a wedding and, a country wedding. And Toots loved weddings. I'm not quite sure why, but we occasionally used to do private gigs at weddings. And he never sang better. He always sang well, pretty much. I mean, there were a couple of nights where he could barely croak and it wasn't amazing, but he was super consistent. But on the wedding gigs, there was kind of a freedom and a soulfulness that was even more pronounced. So I don't know if he was, closet romantic or whatever, but he loved weddings. So when I decided to re-record the album, obviously, that was one I had to get right. And in thinking about how to record it, I thought, I could call up Toots and I'm sure he would sing on it for me. But it's not going to be as great as the original, and it's going to be compared to the original. It's just not going to stand up. So what can I do that's similar to Toots, but not the same? So I'm really in love with South African music. And there's a group there called the Mahotella Queens that are kind of like the I3s of South Africa. And they've been around since, I think, the 60s. And they have this wonderful harmony sound, kind of like the old Maytals in a way. So I thought, well, why don't I get females to sing the Maytals parts? And that'll be a way of making it completely different from the Toots version. It's about a wedding, and women, of course, go to weddings and get married as men do. So it's still in the spirit of the tune, but it'll give a new twist to it. So I called up Janice Pendarvis, who is, A-list background singer in New York since the 70s, I guess. And she's really my go-to person for anything related to singing. So I explained to her what I wanted to do. She wasn't familiar with the Mahotella Queens, so I sent her some videos. And she called me back and said, this is definitely going to work. And I said, well, how many singers do I need? I can't really tell how many parts it is. And she says, well, it sounds like 3 parts, but they're double tracked. And I said, I don't want to overdub anything. If I hire 6 singers, will I get the same sound as 3 singers double tracked? And she goes, it'll sound great. And I said, good. All right. I'm hiring 6 singers. So that's what I did. And obviously Janice was one of them. And I got Magano, who's from Toots's area in Jamaica. She's from Maypen and Clarendon. And she was kind of our dialect coach, make sure that they did justice to the accent. And then Simone Gordon, whom you know from the various Marleys, and Kim Miller, who used to sing with my band in Israel Vibrations. So that's 3. And let me think, who else is there? Okay, Shay Lawrence, who's a woman I know from the Bronx, very talented up and coming person. And I'm missing, goodness. Okay, yes, Magano from Derek's band. I said her. Audrey Martels, who Janice recommended. And it turned out I'd recorded with Audrey years and years before, but never met. It was one of those situations where she sang on something and they overdubbed me. So that's 5. And who was the last one? let's see. Yeah, oh yeah, Janice, Simone, Audrey, Kim, Magano, and Shay. Yeah, 6. Okay, so everything was recorded live. Um, we got all 6 singers, and I think we had 6 or 7 musicians in the band, and we went to the studio, and Sydney Mills was playing keyboards from Steel Pulse, and my dear friend Earl Appleton was on organ, I think, and Sydney was on the piano. And right before we did the take, they started playing around with something that sounded like church, and I thought, okay, this is great. We have all these 6 wonderful black female singers. We have an organ, we have a piano, we have church. Let's put a little church on the record. So they had been playing around with this thing while we were getting the mics ready, and I said, okay, do that on the take. So they did, and as I was counting off on the tune, one of the singers said "Hallelujah," and to this day I don't know which one it was, and it wasn't planned, but you can hear her on the record. And so that's how it went down. We cut everything live. I think we did 7 takes and used the 6th. And then we did the same thing with Pressure Drop, which is the other Toots song on The Harder They Come.
Sweet and Dandy is in fact a great version, a lot of fervor in it, and I think, it's really a tribute. Andy, thanks a mil for sharing those memories with us, and all the best with your new album.
Oh, thank you so much.
P, as one of the longest standing members of Toots's band, what was it like when you started out first?
It was exciting. Because I've always admired Toots and wanted to get a chance to, or the opportunity to play with him, whether in the studio or wherever. And I was always focused on that. And when the opportunity came, wow, it was amazing, really amazing. It actually came sooner than I expected, and recording with him in the studio was something else because, as you know, Toots doesn't do anything the same way twice.
Okay.
So that was kind of frightening, but I got adjusted to that, and I got to know him very well and recognize that was how he was, that's how he approached the music. And
tell me about 2 memories in recording or live performance that still stand out in your mind.
Well, one is, like I said, even in the studio, when Toots is recording a song, he will change the song in the middle of the recording, and he expects you to follow him and know where he's going. So I developed that chemistry over the years. That's in the studio, I don't panic, or on stage.
You could always anticipate him.
Exactly, because he's always changing. And a particular time, I don't remember exactly the song that he did that would be the first time, but at first I to be honest, I panicked, but then I recognized that this is who the man is, and it just went smooth. And ever since, that happens all the time during recording. One particular time in a live performance, the first time we went on the road as the band, because we were always recording. And at that time we had Jackie Jackson, Winston Wright, Hux Brown, all of the top guys.
The key group.
Yes, I was the rookie, of course. But we played in Anaheim Stadium with the Eagles, Jackson Brown and Linda Ronstadt. And we had rehearsed for like 2 weeks down at Oxford Road where Tommy Cowan used to write. And Dermot, when we got to the stadium, you know, we rehearsed everything down pat and everything. And Paddy just looked at us and said, "Paddy, are you ready?" And usually when he does something like that, you know something is coming, but you don't know what it is. Well, listen, man. All the rehearsals, all the things that we did at that down in Tommy's place, he changed everything right there in front of 100,000 people. Anaheim, it was packed. He changed every song his way, and it went down fine because we knew him that well. And it was like I'm in his head because I was able to anticipate and know, you know, where he wants to go, when, and it was amazing. But when we came on, people asking us how long we've been rehearsing, and they don't realize that, yes, we did. But nothing that we rehearsed happened here today.
So therefore, that really tells you something about the statement that of all Tootsie's musicians, you seem to have understood him the best. Was that because you could anticipate him the best?
I think so, and I always make a special effort to understand him because he was just special. He was just different from anybody else. I played with most of the guys, Bob, Peter, everybody. But he was just different because I recognized that most important, all you had to do, or what was most important, is that you keep your eyes peeled on him at all times and listen, because he will repeat things, and just listen to what he's saying. And I found that worked. I mean, it was unbelievable. So I played a show with Al Green in Canada, and I did not even rehearse. And not that I thought that it wasn't part of my having the ability, but when I realized that I didn't know any other songs, because it was the time when Al Green was doing gospel. And when they asked me to play, and I said, but there are several drummers there, and we all know. And nobody wanted to play because they said they didn't rehearse. And I'm saying, well, there's no reason to rehearse. In Jamaica, we know every Al Green song. But when I got on stage, Dermot, and realized that I didn't know one song, I did not panic because I remember Toots. He was in my head, and I'm saying, okay.
Just wing it.
Went like a dream. Once again, just my association with this man and his talent and what he was all about was amazing.
The loss of Toots, what does it mean to you?
I don't even know where to start. It would be, thoroughly missed. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll never be the same. You cannot replace this man. He was so, wow. Losing him was, I don't know. It's beyond comprehension, this. Yes.
You're working though on your own solo project. Tell me about
Yes.
that.
Yes. Well, I've wanted to do this for a long time, and the opportunity presents itself now because, to be honest, I wanted to have a lot of my friends or musicians who I grew up with, or even who came before me, but who I had a lot of respect for and admired. People like Trevor Lopez and Leslie Butler
Okay.
and Monty, which I fortunately was able to, it took a while because, everybody is busy and all that kind of stuff. But I got most of Willie Lindo is on there, Andy Bassford is on there, Ricky Walters, Ricky who's played with Fabulous Five. His son Richie is on there too. He's a very good guitar player. And Toots is on there also, Tyrone Downey, Glenn Brownie, Val Douglas, Jackie Jackson, which is a part of A.J. Brown, Charles Farquharson, Norris Webb, all the guys, and of course my son. You remember my son who played at Mutual Life there, and he used to play with the Sonny Bradshaw Big Band, Steve, the drummer.
So it's what, original your songs, or you're just choosing a cross section of material?
Well, I have original songs. Most of them are originals. And my son and daughter was very instrumental in producing and writing some of the songs.
Wonderful.
But it was a combination. We wrote, most of the songs are original. So they sang on there. I did a little thing, and my daughter and, AJ sang on there. And
when is the album likely to be finished?
Maybe in the summer. I'm pushing for the summer.
Okay.
It's because of the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. It affected me trying to, having to complete the project sooner.
Okay.
I mean, it has affected almost everyone, but just have to work with it.
Sounds great, man. Look forward to that album, and thanks for sharing, your memories about Toots with us.
And respect, and for the opportunity, to
Take care, Paul. Good to see you, man.
All right, Dermot. Thanks a lot, man. I'm blessed. All right. Thank you.